Dr. Nate Israel is with us from Oregon, where he is the director of the Union Point Group. Union Point has a great description of their work on their website. It is great in both its simplicity and its message. We help systems help people. I really like that. Dr. Israel helps organizations and systems adopt more effective family and youth-driven practices. He consults with states, including Idaho's Department of Health and Welfare, regions, and private agencies to help them become more transparent about the impacts of their work with family and youth.
I start by acknowledging the folks here that really the genesis behind this whole idea, of course, is the Federation of Families saying we need something to be able to really get the word out, both to professionals and to families, around how we bridge the gap between what we're hoping happens and what is happening. And Ruth, Michelle, and Pat are just consummate professionals in trying to figure out what's the best way to do this in the most challenging environment possible to put on a conference, which is in the middle of a pandemic across a geographically distributed state where it's very difficult to bring people together. And so I think the idea that they've been able to do that virtually is already a success. As Ruth mentioned, the materials that I'll present today will be on the IFF website. There are a couple of handouts that are specific to this presentation, which we've created in easy to print versions. I'll try and be brief about why I got into this. About 15 years ago, I started getting very interested in family and youth directed change. I'm trying to figure out, how do we make family and youth directed change really stick in children's behavioral health systems? And so we looked at a series of other systems. As well, I was faculty at the University of South Florida. We looked at a series of other systems where it looked like they'd been successful in making that change. And what we found is that there's this systems change cycle that happens. And the first is identifying where the system is not working. The second is being really clear about that, and in fact, publicizing it so that you can get people motivated to change that system. But then when you have people motivated to change a system, you have to actually show what it is that you would do differently and why it's better for any change to really take place. And then the system has to support that change, right? You have to get change up and down the line, people behind it and motivated to change in order for that change to stick. Well, one of the things that we realized in this process is that this has to be a continuous process, because big changes in systems can take anywhere from 10 years to 20 years to actually take place and take root. We don't have 10 or 20 years to wait. Our children will have all grown up by that point in time. And so as the system is changing, we have to figure out, well, what are the strategies that we use to make the system as effective as possible while it's going through change? So here's some targets that we really pushed for as a result of the research that we had done. And the first is the idea that we have to decentralize power, and families and youth have to be at the center of operationalizing or defining what is good care. Now, there are two other pieces to that that we identified as absolutely critical. One of them is happening today, so that educating and empowering family members and youth to become agents of change is the whole point, I think, of this conference. The other piece that we have to figure out is to create financial incentives for family-focused innovation. And I think that that's still a ways off for almost every behavioral health system in America. If they were to do that, it would really change the way that providers acted if parents had control of the dollars. That's beyond what we're talking about today, but those were our findings from those early studies. I then went on to the San Francisco Department of Public Health and worked to implement the CANs there beginning in 2018, or oh my gosh, if only it were 2018, beginning in 2008, it's a good 13 years ago. And as we were implementing the CANs, part of what we found is that there was this enormous gap between the intentions of practitioners and the experience of families. Practitioners intended to use a transparent, collaborative, empowering process, but that's not what parents experienced. And so we did over 20 focus groups with family members and youth to really dig down into how families would define collaborative care using the CANs. And this is to use the CANs for screening, for assessment, for treatment planning, to reassess and mark progress in treatment, and then for transition planning. And we built a manual based on that has a series of strategies that systems can use, that providers can use to implement the CANs in a way that's actually collaborative and helps lead to shared goals and the desired outcomes of families. And then we went beyond that. We went and we surveyed families based on the practices that were described in that manual. And we said, to what extent did you experience these collaborative practices? And then we also asked them, how much did your child's functioning change over time? They're functioning at home, in school, and while they're out in the community. And what we found was this very strong relationship between truly collaborative, parent-defined care and improvements in your child's outcome. So the more collaborative providers were, and the closer their practices hewed to what parents said that they wanted, the better the outcomes for kids and families.